My point is that my mother was born in 1951. She desegregated schools. My father was shot in the civil rights movement. Those people.
Let him finish.
I'm going to finish because you're being utterly disrespectful.
Not at all.
So I'm going to finish this comment. So what I'm telling you is that there are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a dick.
Abby Phillip had double the MAGA goons on her show last night with Kevin O'Leary and Scott Jennings, these two insufferable smug pricks. We're going to look at clips of Bakari Sellers and Ashley Allison going up against Kevin O'Leary and Scott Jennings while pushing back on all of their nonsense. I also want to share my thoughts on this because there's a lot to talk about here. Let's get into it together.
Right, it's spreading. A battle over redistricting that is playing out at the Supreme Court as Republicans and Democrats try to gain an edge in November's midterm elections. Today, the court's conservative majority cleared the way for Alabama to use a new congressional map that would eliminate a district currently held by a black Democrat. The Supreme Court offered no explanation in its order, which tosses out a lower court decision that blocked the use of that 2023 map. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor joined the court's other two liberals and said that the order was inappropriate and that it will cause confusion as voters head into the polls in the next week's election. The decision hands yet another victory to Republicans just days after Virginia's Supreme Court struck down a measure that would have allowed Democrats to redraw congressional maps in their favor. Virginia Democrats are now asking the Supreme Court to reinstate that map. That seems like a bit of a Hail Mary pass there on the part of Virginia Democrats. But the broader issue is that, especially when you look at what's happening in Alabama, there's already voting underway in that state. They are planning to toss out that map, go with a new map that favors Republicans, eliminates a black district. And then you have the President Trump, sending a message to South Carolina, your home state, Bakari, saying the South Carolina State Senate has a big vote tomorrow on redistricting. He says, Republicans, be bold and courageous, just like the Republicans of the great state of Tennessee were last week. Move the U.S. House primaries to August. Leave the rest on the same schedule. Everything will be fine. Get it done. So we're going beyond new maps here. Now we're tinkering with the calendar. People are voting. Maybe those votes get thrown out. It's chaos.
I mean, not only is it chaos, but you're literally throwing out votes, as you said. I mean, I watched 60 Minutes with Governor Landry from Louisiana throwing out votes, and he chuckled about it. In South Carolina, people have already voted from overseas, and you chuckle about it. But I want to take a step back and look at this from a 50,000-foot view, to be completely honest. I think Ashley and I have to wrestle with the fact that we are going to be the first generation to actually leave this country worse than the one that we inherited. And I think for black millennials, the progress that our parents and grandparents gave us, that we're watching being ripped away from us, is something that our generation is going to have to really wrestle with in figuring out how we get out of this conundrum. If somebody fell asleep in 1896 and woke up today in 2026, they would simply say the only difference is now Negroes have a TV show and we wear nice suits. They swapped out Klan hoods for Brooks Brothers suits. And that is the problem. I mean, Plessy v. Ferguson was 7-1, and it gave birth to 50 years of Jim Crow. What we have with this court right now, what we're seeing, is watching people who have fought and died and bled so that we would have access to the ballot box, so that we would have access to our voices being heard in Congress, being ripped away. And I think that there is a casual laughter from people we believe to be our friends on the right who are showing us true colors today, because the most sacred, or one of the most sacred acts you have in the United States of America, is the ability to cast a ballot and elect someone and send them to Congress, the state house, or a mayoral seat that represents your interest. And now black folks throughout the South are being silenced. And I don't find that to be a laughing matter.
Well, you know, Scott, I mean, if this were just about partisan gerrymandering, I think that'd be one conversation. But I think part of what's happening right now is that we're in the middle of a political cycle and maps are changing. I was reading an article today about Tennessee, and the lead of the article was two neighbors literally across the street from each other, one white and one black, now in Memphis in different districts. So it's more than just, are we redistricting according to partisanship? It's also, what are we doing in terms of creating a precedent for the use of power across the country, in red states and in blue states?
Yeah, it's a good question about redrawing in the middle of an ongoing election. In the case of Louisiana, you know, they didn't have a choice. The Supreme Court said their maps were unconstitutional. They had to redraw it. And so what they chose to do was I think what they'll choose to do is move the House back to the fall, and they'll leave the Senate primary in place, which is actually happening right now. So I get the argument about a little bit of confusion for voters. I mean, around the edges of congressional districts, you're always going to have some areas where, you know, one person on one side of the street, one person on the other. I live on the very western edge of a congressional district in Kentucky, in fact. If I might respectfully debate Bakari on this for a moment, to me, I heard you say that people are losing representation. People are losing their voice. No voter has lost their voice at all. No one's been disenfranchised. Every voter in America before these court rulings could go cast a ballot this November, and
They have literally thrown out votes. Bakari Sellers brought that up right at the beginning of the segment. Also, notice how subdued Scott Jennings is acting here. Somebody has definitely talked to him. I don't know if it was Abby Phillip, her producers, or someone at CNN, but after Scott Jennings got completely owned by Adam Mockler, he suddenly seems a lot more quiet and meek.
every voter in America, white, black, or otherwise, can go cast a ballot right now. The lines may be changing, but every voter still has the same amount of voting power, one vote, that they had. It's just that this Supreme Court said your race doesn't necessarily have to dictate your political identity. The fact that you're an American citizen and your franchise gives you one vote, that is your political identity. And it is incumbent upon both parties, Republicans and Democrats, to run people who speak not to just one constituency, but all American interests. To me, that's how the November election should be run.
Please.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I might agree with you if they hadn't said something different 3 years ago. We aren't talking about in Alabama a district that existed when my grandmother was alive. We're talking about a district that was drawn in 2023 because there are injustices that are still being placed. We're talking about Memphis, where we're not like, it's not just one person across the street. They split a whole city into three to make black voters have less power in House maps. The Voting Rights Act, which actually was the last time it actually was reauthorized, was under your boss, George W. Bush. It used to be a bipartisan thing. It used to be clear that the backdrop of this country, there is discrimination now. There was pervasive discrimination when the law was signed into law during the Civil Rights Movement. We can all go into our partisan corners, but to act like what is happening right now is not a direct attack on black voters' power, black voters' ability to represent themselves. Now, we had this conversation yesterday, Scott. Black voters are allowed to elect whoever they want. And in 2024, they did. They elected a black Democrat in that new district in Alabama. That black Democrat went through a primary of 13 people, and black voters found the agency to come and decide how that primary now will be erased. And put a black Republican up in that district if you want black voters to have a choice. But they're not. That's not what's happening. It is a dissemination, a distribution of black power. And to call it anything other than that, I just think is being historically ignoring the past of our country and pretending like we're not trying to drive our country to a different type of future.
Ashley Allison is absolutely right about what she's saying here. And for Scott Jennings to sit there and claim that they just want people who are going to represent everybody is completely ridiculous, because Scott Jennings does not believe that, and neither does the Republican Party. Their God King Donald Trump spends almost every single day talking about Democrats like they're the enemy. And you have Trump officials all across the board saying the same kind of stuff. Pete Hegseth even said that next to Iran, Democrats are the biggest terrorists. So Scott Jennings, MAGA Republicans, none of these people have any real intention of representing everybody. They only care about representing their own interests, and they clearly do not care about anyone who isn't straight, white, Christian, and male.
Again, is it a guaranteed vote when people's votes have been thrown out? People have already voted and then the state says, we're going to start over again. Is that one person, one vote? Kevin O'Leary's an idiot, and we're going to get to that here in a moment.
That a state-based situation. Add this to the mix. At the end of the day, the state decides at the state level.
Again, is it really a guaranteed vote when people's votes have already been thrown out? People already cast their ballots, and then the state suddenly says, actually, we're going to start over again. Is that really one person, one vote? Kevin O'Leary is an idiot, and we're going to get into that more here in just a moment.
State-based situation. Add this to the mix. At the end of the day, the state decides at the state level. It's in the Constitution. Get over it.
So the problem with that sentiment is that you were born in 1954.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
Very popular.
71.
Yeah.
Right? In 1954,
by the way, I'm a vampire.
During your lifetime, we've actually had Brown v. Board of Education.
I remember.
Yeah, Brown v. Board of Education. I don't know how you remember it. I think you were like 2 months old. But I'm not finished yet. Let me finish my thought.
Drill back to 54.
Yeah, because you're still alive, right? And so there's an entire generation of people. Brown v. Board, it overturned Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896. My point is that my mother was born in 1951. She desegregated schools. My father was shot in the Civil Rights Movement. Those people. I'm going to finish because you're being utterly disrespectful.
Not at all.
So I'm going to finish this comment. So what I'm telling you is that there are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a dick. Just understand.
Okay. Bakari,
just,
please.
just
I'm not
understand.
a dick. I'm pointing something out to you. The Constitution is being upheld.
Hey,
Do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the Constitution of the United States of America?
Bakari, I'm gonna stop you because I just want everybody to reset with a modicum of respect at this table. Please stop.
I want you to understand.
I want to stop here for a second because I first want to talk about how Abby Phillip handled this before getting into the actual substance, or really the lack of substance in this discussion. Abby Phillip did the same thing before when Scott Jennings had that meltdown while arguing with Adam Mockler. And now she's doing it again here with Bakari Sellers and Kevin O'Leary. Bakari Sellers was making a completely valid point, and Kevin O'Leary just kept interrupting him, basically trying to rush him by saying, "Get to your point." That is not Kevin O'Leary's role. He's a guest on the show. Abby Phillip should have stepped in and said, "I'm the host here." You stay quiet and listen while Bakari Sellers makes his point and asks his questions, and then you'll get your chance to respond. Bakari Sellers was absolutely right here because Kevin O'Leary was acting like a complete jerk, and Abby Phillip should not allow that kind of behavior on her show. I know that's part of their whole shtick, where they put people on these panels to fight so they can get viral moments out of it. But that should not be how these discussions work. Now, when it comes to the actual substance here, Bakari Sellers and Kevin O'Leary honestly should not even be on the same panel because Bakari Sellers is a thoughtful and intelligent guy who is making real and valid points, while Kevin O'Leary is a complete buffoon who clearly has no idea what he's talking about. It's honestly amazing to me that Kevin O'Leary has gotten this far because he's rude, he's not very smart, and he constantly tries to be funny even though he's not funny at all. He was trying to make some weird joke about being a vampire after Bakari Sellers mentioned that he's 71 years old, and Bakari Sellers just ignored him completely. Meanwhile, Kevin O'Leary keeps saying things like, "Just get over it, the Constitution, blah blah blah," while Bakari Sellers is actually trying to give him a real history lesson about the civil rights era. And yes, Kevin O'Leary was alive during that time, but as Bakari Sellers pointed out, he was still a child back then. On top of that, Kevin O'Leary is Canadian, not American. So how much does this clown, this buffoon, this MAGA bootlicker really know about civil rights history in the United States compared to Bakari Sellers? Probably very little. Kevin O'Leary was acting like a complete jerk here, and Bakari Sellers was absolutely right to call him out for it. If Kevin O'Leary had just stayed quiet for a minute and actually listened to Bakari Sellers, he might have learned something, but that's never going to happen because the guy is a clown.
There's a price that was paid for this right. There is a price that we uphold. And whether or not you value that, whether or not you value that or not, there are people who bled, sweat, and died and were in prison for access to the ballot box. And what we're seeing throughout the South is that their voice, their vote, their representation, and people who have lived experiences to represent them are not being sent to Congress or where they need to go.
This debate, by the way, is happening among the justices.
And Kevin
O'Leary, once again, has no idea what he's talking about. He's just a loudmouth. The point Bakari Sellers was trying to make to Kevin O'Leary is that there are still people alive today who fought for these rights that Republicans are now doing everything they can to take away. But Kevin O'Leary wants to act like all of this is just ancient history that doesn't matter anymore. What we're learning now, though, is that a lot of people, not the people who actually fought for these rights, but the general public, assumed that once rights were won, they could never be taken away. Just look at what happened with Roe v. Wade. So many people kept saying, that'll never be overturned, that could never happen. And then it happened. Bakari Sellers understands this reality, while Kevin O'Leary does not because he's a dumbass who doesn't understand that rights are not guaranteed forever. We are seeing in real time that Republicans are not the kind of people who just say, okay, we lost on that issue, let's move on. Republicans always play the long game, and we've seen them spend decades trying to roll the clock backward and take rights away from people.
Look at the Louisiana decision. The conservatives are saying, we've made great progress, it's time to let go of using racial discrimination.
And that's why I utilize the description of...
And the liberal justices say exactly what you just said, Bakari, which is there's a history here that we're overlooking.
But Ellie,
Yeah.
I mean, the 3 years have passed since 2023
Yeah.
and 2026.
Exactly.
It's not that long.
All of a sudden, the country has made
That
that
much progress?
in
And
3 years.
that's the criticism of the majority. Look, there's a famous quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? When the Voting Rights Act came,
Who should have retired?
when the Voting Rights Act came up, when she was on the bench, she said, the conservatives said, well, we've made great progress, so we don't need this anymore. She said, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, that's like getting rid of your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet.
Yes.
And the question is it still raining? Is it drizzling? Is it clear? People differ strongly on that.
And guess what? It can be clear.
or even to change the analogy a little bit, well, it rained today and now it stopped raining, so I'll get rid of my umbrella because I'm not going to need my umbrella in the future. Just ignoring the fact that there are going to be other rainy days to come. You know, just because you have a right now, but the American people have a right, don't think that it's over and Republicans are not going to.
Or to use a slightly different analogy, it's like saying, well, it rained today, but now the rain stopped, so I can just throw away my umbrella because I'll never need it again, while completely ignoring the fact that more rainy days are obviously coming in the future. Just because Americans have certain rights right now does not mean the fight is over, or that Republicans are not going to try to roll those rights back and take them away later on down the road.
And so that's the inconsistency.
And the crazy part is, go ahead.
I just want to point out the one person, one vote. I think, Bakari, us millennials will have to wrestle with how we're going to leave this earth, and I'm determined to leave it better than I found it. And I think that this decision is actually going to open a rush to reevaluate a lot of things, like you say, are in the Constitution. Because right now you have a hat on that says Utah, and they have more representation in the Senate than the people actually in Alabama have in the Senate.
I got a situation in Utah going on.
I know, that's not why you have the hat on.
No, I
but
have it on.
You have it on, and so there are states right now that have 2 senators. When we're sitting in a state right now that has more population than Utah multiplied by 10. And so if we really want to talk about,
I love Utah.
I'm talking about all the states that have smaller populations. If we really want to talk about one person, one vote, and if we really want to go down a path to see what real franchise mean, you might have just opened a discussion that this country should be is timely to actually have.
Right, let's leave it there. Ellie Honig, thank you very much for joining us.
Honestly, I think I dislike Kevin O'Leary even more than Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings is not stupid, but Kevin O'Leary absolutely is. He is completely out of his depth on these panels and never brings any real insight or intelligence to these conversations. All he does is try to make dumb jokes. Like near the end when Ashley Allison was making a serious point and Kevin O'Leary jumped in with, "What? You don't like Utah?" He probably does not even understand the Electoral College or how the American political system gives smaller populations a huge amount of influence across the country. But the problem is, I don't think Kevin O'Leary even cares that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Anyway, let me know what you think about this entire panel discussion. What do you think about what's happening with voting rights in the United States? What do you think about how Abby Phillip handles these panels by constantly doing the both sides thing, even when it's clearly the right-winger acting? Like a jerk while the person on the left is trying to make actual legitimate points. And then Abby Phillip steps in saying both people need to calm down? That really bothers me. Let me know your thoughts on all of this involving Kevin O'Leary, Scott Jennings, Bakari Sellers, and Ashley Allison down in the comments. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video covering all the latest politics news.